What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and our 2023 college football predictions continue for the 2023 college football season. Up next are the Syracuse Orange, a team coming off a pretty decent season last year in 2022. This team went 7-6 overall in 2022. And, this Syracuse team, we saw them, start undefeated from last year's team, but then, the schedule kind of got tougher for them down the stretch, but this team made a lot of progress. This is a team that I was not really high on last year in 2022. My thoughts on them in 2023, I think this is going to be a pretty good Syracuse team. I think people are kind of sleeping on this team a little bit. I think they have a decent amount of production coming back, and plus, fans are just not really hyping them up. I think Syracuse could be a top 25 team as well. Maybe not like a top 25 team, but I think they'll be a decent team perhaps, but looking at the schedule, they'll play Colgate, Western Michigan, Purdue on the road, and Army in their non-conference games. So, yes, they do play Purdue, a rematch there from last year's game. And then you got Army, obviously, a team that's going to want to run out the clock. And then you look at the ACC schedule, no divisions in the ACC this year. And they'll play the top three teams out of the ACC from last year. They'll play Clemson, North Carolina, and Florida State. They get North Carolina and Florida State both on the road, so those will be two tough road games there for this Syracuse team. You don't have to play Louisville. You don't have to play Miami on the schedule, so that's the good news there. But let's go game by game here and give you an official prediction for this Syracuse team. So you got your two non-conference games here to start out 2023 with Colgate and Western Michigan. I think these should be pretty easy wins here for Syracuse. I think these are two games where they can score at least about 30-some points. So I think Syracuse starts out 2-0 with easy wins there over Colgate and Western Michigan, both in the month of September. Then they'll play Purdue on the road here on September 16th. Big non-conference game here between these two teams. We saw what, the matchup was kind of like for these teams last year. And, Purdue went on to have a really good season. They went on to go to the Big Ten championship. Obviously, like I said, Syracuse started out undefeated last year, and they beat Purdue last year as well. Came down to a game-winning touchdown, so this will be another interesting test here. But this game is on the road. It is on the road for Syracuse. It's going to be a very tough place to play. And I know Purdue's got a first-year head coach coming in, but I think these two teams are both pretty even. I think this is a 50-50 game, coin flip type game for me, and I usually go with home field advantage when it comes to these coin flip games. So with that being said, I like Purdue here in a close one over Syracuse and about a field goal perhaps. I think Purdue is probably a field goal favorite heading into this game perhaps, and I think that's how it ends. So I think Purdue wins that one there in a close one over Syracuse, and I think Syracuse, though, takes care of business against Army. However, the Army game won't be really a high-scoring game. It will pretty much be a defensive battle. I think Army wants to run out the clock a little bit in this game. They're going to run that triple option, so it will be a hard time for Syracuse offense, to get on the field, but I think Syracuse does win it at least at home on September the 23rd, so I think they start out 3-1. Then they'll play Clemson here at home on September the 30th. I think this is going to be a pretty interesting game. Syracuse obviously competed last year on the road in Death Valley. This could be another interesting game here between the Tigers and the Orange. And, we've seen in the past where Syracuse has given Clemson in the trouble in the past. And, sometimes Syracuse would be the only team that would defeat Clemson last year in the regular season. This year, I think, could be a really close game this year. Clemson, though, it's just hard to tell how good they're going to be on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, though, I think is what really wins the game here for Clemson. I think this game does go into the fourth quarter, but I think Syracuse will lose a close one here to Clemson by at least 10 points or maybe 7 points by a touchdown. So I think Syracuse loses a close one to Clemson here at home on September the 30th. That puts their record at 3-2. Then they'll play North Carolina on the road here on October the 7th. So you're coming off a really close loss to Clemson here, at home from last week. Now you're heading on the road to face the Tar Heels of North Carolina. I think North Carolina is going to be more explosive than Clemson's offense. I think, North Carolina with Drake May coming back, it's going to be really huge for this North Carolina team. I think Syracuse will compete in this game, maybe for the first half, but, second half, I think the defense steps up for the Tar Heels. They start to, rebound a little bit. I am kind of concerned about the defense for North Carolina, but I think offensively it's a shootout-type ball game in the first half. Second half, I think the Tar Heels defense will step up, and I think North Carolina gets the win here over Syracuse, and that puts Syracuse record at 3-3, but it doesn't get much easier than that. They'll play Florida State on the road next week here on October the 14th. Florida State's a team that has a lot of experience coming back on their roster. And this is the game I don't really see being all that close. I know Florida State's got a lot of production coming back. I mean, it's really a game that could go either way. But I think Florida State is just way too talented. I know Syracuse, like I said, will compete for the first half in the North Carolina game. But defensively, I think the Seminoles hold Syracuse to a really low-scoring type game here. I think Florida State wins it by at least a couple touchdowns, maybe more than that. So I think Florida State will win it here over Syracuse. And I think they give Syracuse their 4th loss of the season. So that's 3 losses in a row for Syracuse. They're at 3-4 now. Then they'll play Virginia Tech here on the road on October the 26th. And this is also another road game. 3 straight road games here for Syracuse. All very tough places to play. Virginia Tech, though, is a team I don't really expect to be all that good this year. Plus, Syracuse gets a bye week before playing this game. This game will be on a Thursday night as well, I'm supposing. So Syracuse, I think, will be the better team here. They have the more experienced roster. Virginia Tech is a team that I really don't expect to be all that good. Like I said, it's just hard to tell how good this team is going to be. And with that being said, I think Syracuse gets a win over Virginia Tech here on the road, but it won't be like an easy win. I think Syracuse wins it by at least a touchdown, though. So I think Syracuse improves to 4-4. Then they get to the month of November. They'll play Boston College here at home on November 3rd. This game is on a Friday, I suppose. Boston College is a team I think everybody is kind of sleeping on. I think this Boston College team could probably make it to a bowl game this year. They got a lot of talent on their roster, a lot of experience coming back from last year's team. They lose their starting quarterback, though, Phil Jerkoff. He's transferred over to Pittsburgh, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But this game, I think, will be close. I think it is going into the 4th quarter in this game, but Syracuse is at home in this game. It's tough to predict Syracuse when they're playing at home. So with that being said, I think Syracuse gets the close win here over Boston College in a shootout-type game and maybe a 30-something point game perhaps. They score 30 points each. I think Syracuse wins it, though, and I think they improve to 5-4. Then it's Pittsburgh at New York here on November 11th. So you got a neutral site game here against Pittsburgh at New York. Obviously, Phil Jerkoff, the transfer coming over from Boston College, like I just mentioned. I think he's going to be a pretty good quarterback, but, the question is, this is a tough one to predict because it is a neutral site game. And usually when it comes to these neutral site games, I usually, just go with home field, or actually the experience, like who has the more experienced roster in this game. And that would belong to the Orange. So I think Syracuse will get the win here over Pittsburgh in New York. I think this is a pretty tough matchup, but I think, Syracuse will get the win and improve to 6-4 after that win over Pittsburgh. So they're on a 3-game winning streak. Then it's Georgia Tech on the road here on November 18th. A Georgia Tech team that made a lot of progress last year. I think I can expect this game to be all that close. I think it will be a pretty close game between these two teams. I think Georgia Tech could make a lot of progress heading into the last part of the college football season. I think this team is kind of better by this time in the month of November. I mean, no matter how many losses they have pretty much, on the horizon. But I think Georgia Tech is going to be a pretty good team this year. I mean, it's going to be a lot of question marks, but I think Georgia Tech, with them being here at home, this is a tough one to call. It's really a tough one to call. Plus, it's in the month of November. Let's say if Syracuse was ranked in the top 25 by this point, which I don't think they will be. But I think Syracuse will lose a close one to Georgia Tech here in a defensive battle. I think both teams are pretty even, to be honest. I think Georgia Tech will win it here, and I think with just with home field advantage. I think it's definitely one of those upset alert games in the ACC, so I'm going with Georgia Tech here to knock off Syracuse on November 18th, and I think that puts Syracuse record at 6-5. Then they'll play Wake Forest here to end things out on November 25th. Wake Forest has got a team that's going to be without Sam Hartman at quarterback, but I think this is still a very talented Demon Dinkins team. I think they're still going to probably make it to a bowl game. Even without Sam Hartman at quarterback, I think this team has still got really plenty of quarterback play. They're going to want to run the football in this game. I think this is a shootout-type ball game. It's kind of similar to the Boston College game. It will go either way, but Syracuse at home, I think, gets it done here in a close, field goal type matchup, and I think Syracuse wins it at home against Wake Forest, and I got Syracuse finishing with a record of 7-5 for the 2023 season. So I know Syracuse is a team that's not getting a lot of hype. I think this schedule really sets up well for them. They do have a tough road games, though, with, North Carolina and Florida State. But don't forget about that Virginia Tech game. That's a game they could potentially lose, and also they can win on the road at Purdue. I think they can have a chance in that game. It's very possible that Syracuse can go 8-4, maybe 6-6. If they did defeat Georgia Tech, they would go 8-4. If they didn't defeat, maybe Virginia Tech on the road, this team definitely goes 6-6. But I think Georgia Tech is a tough one for me. I had a really hard time picking that game, so I just went with home field advantage, and obviously it came down to a flip a coin game. But I think Syracuse finishes 2023 with a record of 7-5. Give me your thoughts on this Syracuse team down in the comments below. What do you think their record is, and what do you think their prediction is for 2023? My prediction is 7-5. Stay tuned here for more sports content videos on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.